we are now recording with my good friend, Brandon Smits, one of the partners at growthinc.io, a mastermind when it comes to LinkedIn and Facebook advertising. I know that's how you and I met, is through the Facebook advertising expertise that you and I both share. But then in that process, I learned that you got some pretty cool tricks up your sleeve related to LinkedIn. What else? Why don't you tell me a bit more about what growthinc.io does, or for everybody else?
Sure. So we focus on helping businesses grow their sales pipeline. So we kind of have two main verticals that we help, actually three, I guess. So the first one is e-commerce businesses, and we primarily help them through online advertising, usually Facebook and Instagram. Secondarily, we help coaches grow their following, usually through Facebook, but also through LinkedIn, especially the more executive-oriented they are.
Right.
And then third, I have a long background in SEO. I help larger manufacturing companies help rein in their digital marketing. So that typically looks like a more full approach. You know, it's everything from email marketing to organic SEO traffic and that kind of thing. So those are primarily the three audiences that we serve.
Cool. So you and I didn't have a huge agenda for this conversation, because you and I have had a couple of conversations. We just have fun kind of geeking out on stuff. Yeah. So we can go anywhere, but let's talk about LinkedIn a bit, because I know that's, like I said, that's one of the areas that I know you shine in. So what would be, some of your top tips for people related to LinkedIn off the top of your head?
Sure. So the first tip is the most obvious, and you'll hear any LinkedIn expert sort of talk about this, is, your profile is like, it's your page on LinkedIn. That's how people see you. And making sure that you are tailoring your profile to optimize for the result that you want to get from LinkedIn is very important, but most people don't do it. So you obviously need to have a picture. You're going to want to really rewrite your profile so that when the person you are looking to influence, if you're trying to sell to them, perhaps they're an influencer to the person you sell to, you need to capture their attention and make sure that they understand what you do. The way that LinkedIn was made was as kind of a job site, right? So most people have it written like a resume. It's in third person. They put their achievements on there. They put the company bylines of what they did. But you should really be tailoring every part of your LinkedIn profile to explain the benefit of either the experiences that you had in the past to that specific customer, client, persona that you are targeting on LinkedIn with your effort. And so that's like the basics.
Yes. So let me, here's my recent experience with that, because for sure, I totally agree that when you bring up a good point about LinkedIn, certainly originally being like a job website, as you said, and I certainly saw it as that. I used to, but I really feel as if it's evolved a lot to become now. I don't consider it a job website. I consider it like a growth platform. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it certainly is a growth platform if that's what you want to get from it. I think that on its own, like by itself, LinkedIn has become much more than what it used to be. And I like to think of LinkedIn as a water cooler at your company. And the interesting thing about this water cooler 2.0 idea is that it's not just your company's water cooler, it's the water cooler for all companies across the globe. Now, as entrepreneurs, we obviously see it as a growth platform for business, which it certainly has the potential for that if you can figure out how to use it as a growth platform. But even more broadly, people are able to share their professional experiences. And in a way, it's created a space where people can talk about their professional lives personally. And I think that's actually fairly new. I mean, people did that on Twitter, people do that on Facebook. But what's fascinating about LinkedIn is that you have a lot more organic reach when you're creating a post or even when you're commenting. So interacting with LinkedIn will bring attention to you. Whereas on Facebook, just commenting on something won't necessarily do that, and certainly not in any big kind of way. Also, posting will primarily only show to people who you're friends with and people who interact with you regularly, because you're in competition with everything else that people are actually interested in. Mm-hmm. On LinkedIn, you have sort of the same thing. However, it's much more tailored to, the algorithm will show to people who are interested in either the skills that you have or other people who have those skills. And then if someone on your profile interacts with it, people who you are not connected to will start to see that. And that's fundamentally different from the way that Facebook works in general. It's not, LinkedIn is looking to surface content that they have to you that's unique, unpaid content that you'll be interested in depending on what you do. And that is very different from the way that the Facebook algorithm serves you content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. I mean, it's so true. And first of all, I mean, exactly as you were saying, like the thing is with Facebook and certainly Twitter, I mean, first of all, the subject matters and so on. It's just so broad and people are on Facebook for all kinds of reasons. Twitter, same thing. You know, Twitter's a bit of a bar fight anyways, and people can create all these sort of fake profiles and so on. So, you know, I don't give too much credence to sort of marketing on Twitter for sure. Facebook's a little different in the sense that, yes, Facebook does have all of that psychometric data, so you can target interests or job titles or whatever the case might be in a very granular way. So Facebook does have certainly a marketing opportunity on it. But the beautiful thing about LinkedIn is exactly that everybody is there for. Almost everybody is there for business purposes.
Right.
Exactly as you said, the algorithm and it is very sort of, again, business interest focused and feeding that information. The other big factor that I think is really what has been the game changer for them and converted it into this growth platform is just the introduction a year ago of video. And I get the feeling certainly that it's that the algorithm's giving differential treatment to video.
I think that's very clear. Also, they're giving you metrics on how many people see your video, which they don't really do on your posts.
Correct.
They do it on articles that you write, but they won't show you how many people see a specific post. They will show you the interactions, but you never really before got that top level view. And not just that, it will show you the demographics.
Yeah.
The career-oriented demographics. It'll show you the industry of the people who saw it. It'll show you the region,
companies.
You're getting a lot of rich metrics from LinkedIn video that, yeah, it's almost like you would expect to have to pay for that kind of information on some level. So it's a unique tool, I think, in online marketing right now. I don't expect that all the benefits of using video will continue to stay as more and more people are constantly creating content on LinkedIn. But I do think it shows. You got to give a lot of credit to LinkedIn for creating a video feature that is incentivized to use. If you're trying to build up a personal brand or even just build up a community, LinkedIn video is probably the best way to do that on LinkedIn right now because of the way that your videos can seed into their algorithm. It's extremely powerful. And if you make something that people interact with, you can go sort of LinkedIn viral and overnight have incredible results for very low impact.
Yeah, well, and I think it's through that video that touches on what you were kind of saying before about how people can have sort of a conversation about their experiences, their struggles, and it's very sort of honest in a way. That's what I've really enjoyed about it is it's really through that platform that I've started to talk about a few things. One is I've talked frequently about the economy of authenticity. And again, it's really through that people aren't just sitting there sort of, hey, here's my product and sell. people are saying, hey, I used to struggle with this, or I still struggle with this. What are tips that you've given? And they're asking for people for that, and then people are sort of chiming in and engaging in that conversation, like you said. That again feeds into why I'm saying it's become this growth platform. For sure, it was all, for me, it was certainly unintended, in the sense that, well, first of all, doing this show was never an objective of mine. When I started my agency, almost exactly a year ago, I had no intention of having this additional side project. And then it was, through putting content onto LinkedIn and seeing that engagement and seeing how people reacted to it. And the fact that all of a sudden now I just had this tremendous amount of inbound traffic to me just through doing that. It certainly opened up my eyes, and it's really what has inspired a lot of the posts and articles that I've been posting lately. I've been certainly talking about that, even about this movement that I've been calling, so it's the movement of meaning, which it really isn't so much business related, but it seems to tie in. What I find, though, is I kind of find it interesting is that my articles, even though I might be talking about something and I get very positive feedback on the articles, but certain people don't, like, the views on that versus a video post, they just don't compare. They don't match. So usually I'm creating now a video post that says, here's the full article. It's just the post is like a little teaser about what I'm actually writing about. And that certainly gets people engaging with the article, getting some feedback on that, certainly more than I ever got before. But for sure, the difference is just night and day. I post an article and I get, a few hundred views on it over weeks, whereas I can get, 1,000 views on a post with a video if people like it.
Yeah, within 24 hours usually.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible. And I think, I wish that more people some people are doing it. I've seen some people sort of build a personal brand that don't really have anything to sell. And I think that's really good for LinkedIn and for everybody who's trying to use LinkedIn as a growth platform, because as more and more professionals who aren't as interested in sort of using Facebook as a social network, realize that there's this conversation that you're talking about going on, the better that is for everybody. Because the more that people are on there just sort of promoting what they do, their services or their products, the less likely people are to engage in that. Mm-hmm. And the more that the conversation steers towards sort of work, because work is such a fundamentally large part of your life that everybody can relate to in some way, the more value I think people are going to get from the experience of using LinkedIn, which means that, for me as an advertiser, that's good. For me as an entrepreneur trying to promote my brand, that's good for me. And then finally, for me as an end user, more relatable content is also is really good for me. And I'm interested to see how LinkedIn adapts, because with overpowering this video, there's been a whole sort of subculture created of people who are looking to really benefit from that. And they've started to release features specifically for these people. In particular, a lot of people who create videos get in what are called sort of engagement pods, at least that's what they're calling them, right? Of people who will sort of help each other promote their videos through their reach, which naturally allows the video to seed to their audiences. What's fascinating to me about that is LinkedIn just released a bunch of group messaging features. And as far as I know, these are the only people who are really using group messaging on LinkedIn, at least with any kind of, I imagine some people are very improperly using that to sort of spam people, but I don't think that group messaging is really used in very many other ways than to let people know about the content that you just shared on the platform. And so it's fascinating to me that they've allowed you to tag people in group messaging, release these features that are obviously for people who are coordinating their efforts to promote each other's content. To me, that just shows that LinkedIn, unlike other social networks, is okay with you working together to promote your content, because they know that it allows you to make to get a faster feedback loop and sort of know what content people will like faster if you're working on it with other collaborators, even in just promotionally.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that, part of it has to do with, from a marketing perspective, they're playing a bit of catch up to Facebook, and obviously like a major factor that has a big impact, I think, on advertising on Facebook is the social proof behind it. So they're facilitating that. And I think the other thing maybe is just a recognition of where the market is going. I posted an article in a video a few weeks back, slightly provocative, but at the same time, like, to me, it's just very honest. And the title of it was, "You're probably going to lose your job soon." Right. And it's based on a whole bunch of factors. One is just like looking at our industry, marketing, having been in it, and pointing out that I've always observed how we're the canary in the coal mine. So things like people that I know in various agencies losing their jobs is often, again, just an indication of what's going to happen to other people. Two, you hear what artificial intelligence, all the different careers and types of jobs that might displace, as well as robots, and so on. And then thirdly, just based on a whole bunch of articles that I've seen recently. And the predictions have always been variable as to how much of the market they expect to be freelance by the year 2020. But the lowest estimate that I've seen is something like 34%, and the higher estimate is 50%.
Yeah.
Right. So what I've started to call this, and how we like a lot of marketers, we've used this term when you're targeting people about find your tribe. Right. And what I've suggested actually is that maybe what we should be changing that language for two reasons. One, because tribe has certain negative connotations. But the other one is that if we're actually going to imagine, like, if we're, in just a couple of years from now, we are a workforce that is 50% freelance, and therefore working essentially in this group pod style where we're hiring, where everybody's kind of white labeling for each other back and forth in various configurations. That means that we're kind of going back to a village economy, right? Only on a global scale. So that's why I'm saying is maybe what we should be saying is find your village.
Sure.
Right. So yeah, no, I find that a very interesting phenomenon. The fact that they're facilitating that, maybe just a reflection of just that they're seeing where the workforce is going.
Well, sure, and any platform product like LinkedIn or Facebook, any social network, has a platform of users that are able to share content. They have metrics surrounding the usage, and the product team at LinkedIn, I think, ever since the Microsoft acquisition happened, have really paid attention and been very quickly improving many of the products on LinkedIn and deprecating products that weren't working very well on LinkedIn. Groups is one that I'll mention as definitely being removed in importance from LinkedIn. Most of the features and the power of having a big group are quickly vanishing. People aren't using groups as much. Most groups are now just echo chambers for the admins of the group to try to get people to involve. Many of them have monetized their groups, and I think LinkedIn doesn't know what to do with groups right now. The other part of the platform that's been getting better but not fast enough, in my opinion, is the advertising platform.
Yeah,
I do think that what LinkedIn lacks in features in the advertising platform, it makes up for in the actual user base, because LinkedIn obviously has just way more business demographics than Facebook does. You can actually target people based on their seniority inside the platform, which can be done on Facebook, but it's a very, very different way to do it. It requires a lot more research.
Mm-hmm.
And you definitely pay for that difference. But what's interesting to me most about LinkedIn is that I think advertising as a revenue medium is not LinkedIn's primary goal, whereas that is Facebook's primary goal.
Right.
LinkedIn has other products and ways that they monetize the platform, such as like recruiting is a big one. The sort of job board aspect, and LinkedIn being Microsoft owned, like they're not under the same pressure that Facebook is under to generate advertising dollar revenue. I see way less ads on LinkedIn than I do on Facebook.
Yeah.
And I think LinkedIn is being very careful about how they allow people to advertise, and they're charging a very high premium on the space that I doubt they need to. But they do have people who are willing to pay for that. So at a very high level. So it's a pretty interesting sort of mix of their direction for the platform. And I'm really bullish on LinkedIn's potential as a part of your life. I mean, I think that's kind of a weird thing to say, but
no, I don't think that's that weird. I mean, what I think is again, this is where I feel like this is sort of again part and parcel with this sort of movement, the social movement that I'm talking about, and why I think this is all interrelated. You know, one of the great sort of advocates I would say for this is a guy like Richard Branson, who will say, you know, that work, life, and play are all the same thing to him. Right? So it's really sort of challenging that idea of, you know, work-life balance, right? Which is really more, you know, that idea of, you know, you take from one, you give to the other, and therefore it's a balancing act versus, you know, these things you can, again, and going back again, if everybody's sort of freelance mode, you know, what is that? How can you have it so that you know, because I think this is possible for, again, going back to this idea of a village economy where you stay in your lane, you focus on what your strengths are, what you're good at, find the complementary services that make that a sort of a full package service. Then you're spending the time doing what you're good at and what you enjoy doing, right? And you're in flow. And then when you're doing that stuff. And so it's interrelated in the sense of, like, exactly when you said, I think you're bang on to say, you know, as part of your life. Right now, I'm kind of bullish on it too, and not from an advertising perspective. I've experimented with the advertising, and the same thing as you're saying. It's not so much that it's the premium or the expense. It's just that it consumes your budget in no time, whereas Facebook kind of feeds that out slowly, and so you're able to kind of analyze the metrics from it. And make adjustments as you go. Whereas, you know, for me, LinkedIn just kind of chewed up my budgets in a day, and then after the fact, I could kind of look at it and say, okay, well, that worked.
Certainly depends on your budget size, right? LinkedIn, the bigger your budget, the more likely LinkedIn is somewhere that you'll spend your money. But yeah, I think that in order for it to be an advertising platform that's as advantageous as using as something like Facebook. I mean, you have to have the right business model right now on LinkedIn, but what LinkedIn needs to do is make the product a part of your life. That's when they'll get the scale that they need in order to be able to serve smaller budget advertising accounts in the way that Facebook can right now. And I mean, I haven't looked at metrics, and I don't know how public they are on usage of Facebook versus LinkedIn, but I think it's pretty easy to say that people are using Facebook a lot more than LinkedIn right now.
Yeah.
But I do
from an advertising perspective, yeah.
Right. I do expect the usage. I don't view them as competitive, because I think that they're different.
Yeah, they're different animals. Like
parts of your life, right? Like kind of work and play. But I think people who are more focused on business or career are going to be increasingly more likely to use LinkedIn than they are Facebook, with the notable exception of probably the marketing and advertising industry, and a lot of a lot of them are going to continue to use Facebook and in more than just a ad platform.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, exactly. Like for me, I consider exactly that Facebook is like an ad platform, and LinkedIn is more for an organic reach. Really, that's how I've been using it. Now, I don't know. You're an advocate of Salesforce Navigator, right? For LinkedIn.
LinkedIn Navigator.
LinkedIn Navigator, right? Oh, that's right. Yeah.
It depends on what you need, really. It allows you, if you're, one of the strategies that I use is building up a database of people who are my prospects. And so the best way to do that, or really probably the only way to do that at scale, is with an upgraded LinkedIn account. Because it'll allow you to connect with people who are outside of your secondary network, which you can't do unless you have that. So in that sense, I am an advocate of it. I think it's smart of LinkedIn to create that kind of pay-to-play, if you're going to sell on our platform environment. And I do, mine's actually not upgraded right now. But
neither is mine.
I'm working on getting to the point where I can put that effort. I run campaigns for some of my clients, both on the ad side and LinkedIn side. It's always a balancing act to work on your marketing versus your client's marketing.
Right. Yeah.
It's challenging, but so I haven't been very active on LinkedIn in the past month or two. I experimented with some videos, and it actually went really well. And so I created all the infrastructure to sort of factory style produce LinkedIn videos, but I haven't actually been able to get the discipline of doing it in action yet. This is probably because I haven't really been doing stuff like this.
Right. Well, again, for me, it's something that just kind of happened organically and naturally, again, through doing this show. I think, again, we were kind of talking about earlier, where, the show has nothing to do with selling my business. I don't even know if I've ever even mentioned my company's name. Right. The show has its own thing. The purpose of the show is really just to kind of help people, and also because, I get to speak with other sort of thought leaders and people with expertise. That's a great way to spend my time. And so for me, the show has naturally very quickly created content. I spend very little time on it though, right? Like it's an hour conversation tops usually with somebody. I probably spend less time in post-production, just throwing on the intro, outro, doing a little SEO for how to rank the video on YouTube. And then I throw it up live, and maybe again, like I'll just do a sort of an edited version for LinkedIn, because LinkedIn doesn't do, right? So all combined, it's like 2 hours out of my week, maybe 3, almost, So that's sort of given me a very easy way to generate content. And for sure, like I think it is more difficult on your own. It's much different, when you're just having a conversation like this versus getting up on camera. I've done it now a couple of times, and again, that was not something that I ever envisioned doing. I had this idea of sort of becoming a speaker, a public speaker, a persona online. But every now and then, but really then I'm only doing that when something has inspired me, when I really have something to say. And again, going back to the fact that I'm not selling, it's a conversation, and then I always find it very interesting to see what the response is. You get very interesting feedback on it.
Yeah, no, I'm curious to see where your show goes. I mean, I've watched it from day one, so I'm excited to watch that. It's really cool to be a part of it, so thanks for that.
Oh, no, man, I've been wanting to get you on. Well, like I said, you and I have been able to
a long time ago.
It's been a while since we've had a chat, but you and I can talk about all kinds of stuff. We probably should get you back on for a few things, because we've talked about gear, multimedia production stuff. There's a lot of common ground for you and I. This is the other cool thing, right? going back to what I was saying about freelance, you know, again, like for sure, like obviously when it comes to partnering with people, in a lot of cases, I'm maybe looking more for people with complementary skills. In a way, you know, you're doing a lot of the same stuff as me. So it's technically, in a way, you're a competitor. But
Yeah.
I just don't see anybody that way. Like, I'm not competing with anybody.
Right.
And I don't know. Now, let me just get these guys to, I got my, can you hear all this ruckus in the back?
Yeah, I mean, I hear them. It doesn't bother me. I've got them too.
Yeah, yeah. I know. Hey, guys, can you keep it down, please? That's all it takes.
Really? That's good.
Yeah. That'll last for about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
For holidays.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's by the way, I think it's amazing that now, like when I'm on business calls, even with like prospective clients, like I don't care if my children come and like if they interrupt me, I'm confident enough with my prospect to just say, hey, give me one moment. My child is here and they need me for a brief moment.
It happens to me all the time.
And I think what's amazing is, number one, I think the attitude has shifted from, like, that would have shocked people even maybe 5 years ago, and it still shocks some people when you do it, but it becomes kind of a power move because people are like, wow, does he really, like, is that really where his priority is? And like, maybe I could be offended by that, but the more I think about it, the more I admire it, right? Where like,
yeah.
Well, and if somebody won't give me that leeway to take care of my family, even though I'm working with them, if they don't want me to prioritize that over what they have at one given moment within reason, that is not the kind of person that I want to work with. It's not a culture that I think is healthy or sustainable, and I love to see that shifting out of.
Yeah. Well, again, that goes back to, you know, again, the find your tribe or find your village. That's the thing is, again, and this shows that, you know, sometimes I don't swear that often, but I'm certainly willing to, and that might offend some people. And certainly, you know, just the title alone might offend the odd person. But, you know, if you don't, for me, it's like, if you don't have a sense of humor, then I don't know that I want to work with you either. You know, again, if you got a problem with the family. And the other thing for sure is, I just think that, again, this, for sure, it's almost like, in the last, you know, couple of years, white labeling almost had this sort of negative connotation. People like might white label but not want to admit it, right? As if it was some bad thing. And now I don't know that anybody has an issue with that.
Yeah, I think people are much more willing to look at non-conventional ways of getting things done. And whether that's through hiring somebody else to just manage it, or there's some other value add there, I find that, I think everybody used to operate under the perspective that, especially if you're offering a service, that you needed to appear like a big company. And the pure irony of that is that when you flip that on its head, what you realize is that if that person has worked with a very big company before, they recognize that they don't get as much out of it than when they're working with a smaller company who's more attentive to what they need. And so I remember being on a few sales calls and sort of trying to puff myself up and be like, yeah, you know, we have a team. And they're like, well, but how many people are actually working with you? And when I told them, they're like, good, because if you were bigger than this amount, like I wouldn't have been.
Yeah, they wouldn't have been interested.
That would have been a deal breaker for me. And that really
open your eyes. Yeah.
It was the opposite of what I expected, especially from this person. But
yeah.
And they had a much bigger company than mine. So that showed me a lot of perspective. Like, they wanted to hire me or someone like me because they knew that I would care more than even an employee that he could hire would.
Right.
Like, that was his perspective.
Yeah, he knew you'd be dedicated to it. Well, again, it goes back to what I'm saying about, you know, being authentic, being real. And two, like, I think a big factor of all of that, really, again, and goes back again to what I'm saying about our industry being a canary in the coal mine. there was this article in Forbes the other day talking about the greatest threat to the traditional agency right now is the legion of freelancers that they all let go. And no matter what, like no matter how you slice it, however big an agency was, 30 people, 50 people, 100 people, they were always operating only within the competencies of the team members that they had. Whereas here now you've got basically your team is completely scalable. You're able to do things in a much more affordable way because you're not paying a salary to everybody on an ongoing basis. You're paying it on an as needed basis. You're able to go and find the very specific targeted skill set that you need for that given client. And then also I just think because everybody's sort of independent, then they're much more inspired to have a learning mindset, and so they're constantly upgrading their skills. The amount that I've upgraded my skills and my knowledge in the last year relative to what I was doing in 10 years prior at the agency, because I just got into a rut with it, to be honest. Like, why this was my role, this is my job, why go beyond that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think I've been gravitating towards doing everything myself for a long time. And I've been shifting that mindset into like trying to find people who are already naturally very good at it, because I used to have all the time in the world. Now I've realized, that I really need to protect my time. But in even doing that, I've found you have to have a basic level of competency to understand the process to really evaluate whether someone else can help you do it or not. And so that forces you to learn about the process ideally before you start looking for people to actually do it, because that gives you more perspective on how to work with somebody else and understanding like what your workflow is there.
I think, I agree. Like for me, that was very similar too. Like I it's just the way that I operate. It's like I want to understand something before I just offload it to. There's some things that I know I don't like to do, so I'm gonna outsource that right away. But for the most part, I think to what you're saying is I really want it's just in my nature to want to understand the process, how it works, so that I guess in part, so that when I outsource it, I can evaluate how competent the other person is. Yeah.
And also, if you're doing that for a client, you have to be there to catch it if it goes bad. So understanding what's salvageable and what needs to just be like done from scratch.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Like really useful because, one of the downsides, and it's no different than if you had employees do it, but one of the downsides of outsourcing is sometimes you don't, or things come up in people's lives and things don't get done on time, or you have to take it back over. And you have to be ready for that, which is hard to plan for. But, that's why, in my opinion, it helps to have some basic understanding of what's going on. I think a good example of this is a lot of agencies will outsource development of websites. And I've done this before, and I know a lot of people who have. And they just get stuck in the middle of a project that doesn't get completed with a freelance developer who had the right price, but like at the end of the day, that person is just like, whoa, I scoped this wrong and it's way more work than it's worth for me, so I'm just gonna let it go. I won't charge you the full amount. And then like the agency owner is like, oh my God, I don't know what to do from here. I need to find someone else to work on this and finish this. And oftentimes they're like, well, I would rather start over because I don't want to figure out what this person did. And I think
it's hard to jump in midway.
It's hard to jump in midway, and it's not a position that most people want to be in. And I think that, there's a level of authenticity that you're talking about in terms of your marketing, but beyond just your marketing, like having authenticity in the services that you provide, being able to actually add significant value, I think is very important. I mean, even if you're just managing projects for other people, you need to have competency in the process. Otherwise, you're not going to manage it properly.
Right.
unknowingly. And I think it's hard to know what you don't know about the process.
Right.
And yeah, at this point, I'm always willing to pay for the experience of others, because I've started to recognize what happens when other people don't do it. Even just from people who decide not to work with me because maybe I'm more expensive than what they'd hoped for, or like the investment is bigger than they can figure out how to swing. But when I see the results they get from making someone with less investment, it really encourages me to invest properly in the things that I need that are important. And yeah, it's kind of a mindset thing. But I think the market is also maturing like this, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing for sure. In my perspective, I had, my agency, again, kind of like yours, is fairly full service, right? There's a lot of moving parts to it. Neither of us are necessarily very niched down. We're not, exclusively Facebook advertisers, or,
Right.
But I certainly moved away from that idea of, hey, that I'm going to achieve being a full service agency, because there's just too much going on. There are too many potential strategies. No one person can be the master of all. There is no magic, solution that, hey, you know these few things and you're going to make everybody rich. It's really good, business specific, client specific, and the options are pretty much endless at this point, and they're just going to keep on growing, right? There's just more and more platforms. Some platforms may come and go, new tricks, new tools. It's just never going to stop.
That's so true.
Cool, man. Any last words of advice for the audience? Like I said, I think we'll have to get you back on here, because you and I can always go.
Yeah, we can definitely go forever. I think my advice is just going to be very, very personal and very not. Well, it relates to work. I think it's really important to I think it is very important to optimize for your life rather than for your career or a specific business result. I've tried all the different ways. What's worked for me is to value the life that I want and have, and appreciating, or feeling gratitude. And I mean, I get to work from home. My kids are typically here, actually not right now, but having that type of freedom, and I'll call it wealth, that to me, that is a kind of wealth that may have been easy to achieve 100 years ago, but at this point, it's a lot harder to operate in society.
And it's coming back, but I agree with you. It's coming back.
And I think that it's really important to value that kind of thing for yourself. And so no matter what your sort of ideal life picture looks like, I think it's really important to relate it to what you have right now, and apply that to your work. If you do it the other way, you really are creating you're creating a sort of system for your life where your work is your life. And I think that disadvantages you, and therefore it disadvantages even the people that you're trying to serve. So,
and especially for your family, right? You're not doing I mean, first of all, again, when you've got small, you both do, it's you'll never get that time with them back. You don't get to relive that. You can always work, more years later on, but you'll never get their youth back. And yeah, it goes back again to that, like I said, that sort of Richard Branson, I don't have the quote exactly, but the work, life, and play all being kind of the same thing. When it's integrated, when you're finally living that integrated life where, you're able to enjoy all of those aspects on the same level. I agree that it's, you serve. You're a better provider of service. You're a better business person, in part because you're just more fulfilled, I think.
That's really it. I think fulfillment is the key here, because it's really hard to do anything great when you're not fulfilled.
Yeah. Yeah. No, man. Well, I'm totally on board with exactly what you're saying. And again, I think this is I've been talking a lot about that, recently, and I think it's an amazing direction for the economy to shift in that direction. That more and more people can really kind of focus on what their individual, meaning, or what their strengths are, identify those, and then focus on those. And I really think anybody can kind of make a career just around that. So yeah, no, I'm on board with that. I think that's great. That's a great message for everybody.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot for having me.
Oh man, my pleasure. My pleasure. I'm sure we'll like I said, we'll you and I, there's a lot of common ground here. So I'm sure, like I said, we'll pick another theme one of these days, and we'll get you back on.
All right. Sounds
Thanks
great.
so much for coming on, man.
Hey, no problem.
I've got big balls. I've got